two of us, we have real trouble sort of identifying what that means, you know. First of all, you know, we thought about this building, and this building has so much monitoring inside. You know, the elevator knows what it does. We have web cameras. You know, we have telephone knows what it does. Basically, we have monitoring everywhere. So a block check cannot be just something that monitors and sends away RSS streams, because the difference between an object that collects data and an object that is a block check cannot be just the fact that it blocks, because it's just a way of putting XML tags around data. So we asked ourselves, is it a block check because it is remote controllable or at least manipulable? That's one characteristic of a block, that I can add comments. So I can, at least in my blog, talk about your blog, and therefore, you know, information content itself changes, at least in the perception of the user. Then we ask ourselves who the owner should be of a blog, yourself, the government, the group. And also we sort of, by this we came up with the idea that a blog is not just a blog, a real blog. I mean, it's always a person plus a blog. So when we have to talk about blogjects, right? We have to make an analogy not between the blogject and the blog, but between the blogject and the blog plus its owner. And so, as others pointed out, is it visible? That seems to be characteristic. You know, at least a significant amount of people can look at it. You know, and the other thing is, what was the boundary? You know, we talked a lot about robots because we had this idea, for instance, that, you know, we should have a greeting robot, and he pointed out that CMU, they have a robot who is really an ugly piece of thing, and nobody would associate it with a human. So it's ugly, and it collects data, it says things, but everyone ignores it. You know, on the other hand, we have the block checks who maybe just put out data. So what's the difference between a robot? I mean, that has already been said. You know. Also, does it have a purpose? And we sort of came up with the idea that it should have a purpose, but it should not be too purposeful. Like real blocks, you know, like half of the messages are useless, or they go into another direction. They are not just data monitoring devices. You should have other information, and that's why blocks are created, you know, in a way, in my opinion. You know. Just a little remark. You talked about bad old web pages, but I just wanted to tell you that in '93 we had links between pages, and those links are stable. In my web page, I'm not a blogger, and I never will be. Okay, so my homepage is still linked to other homepages, and you cannot say this of blogs. Blogs stay here for 2 years, they go away. You have tens of thousands of information.
Famous last quotes of all my friends. I'll never be a blogger. Now they all are.
No, I mean, no, I won't open this discussion. That's why he also insisted a lot on flycatchers. That was one example we discussed a lot. You know, you have boxes somewhere in trees that catch flies and count flies. Is this a block? I mean, is this a block check? Because it says, you know, today I caught 3 flies. At this time, you have all your criteria. And finally, I mean, I personally felt that your plain thing is not a block check, because it's like a flycatcher. You know, it just tells, yeah.
I think we had a breakthrough because we started working on simplistic scenarios like that, which would just spit out data, right? Because I caught a fly, spits it out, right? Spits out a piece of data. I caught a fly, and so I came up with 3 things. One, it spits out historical data, so you can go and look at the historical data of that flycatcher and see, oh, at 2:15 on Tuesday it caught 3 flies or something. It's discrete. In other words, you can watch N versions of the flycatcher. Where we got the idea for the flycatcher, I grew up in Silicon Valley, and they used to hang these in the trees in the orchards to sort of monitor if an orchard is getting infested with fruit flies. And so you need many, many flycatchers, and you need to be able to watch any specific flycatcher, you know, to maybe lay out a map of fly infestations, you know, as they come into your orchard. And it needs to be continuous. It needs to report that 24 hours, 7 days a week, and just keep going. And then he started saying, well, that's pretty stupid because the flycatcher can only export, and why is it just doing exporting? And we started thinking about importing and having two-way scenarios and an input. So flycatchers should be able to work together, or somebody outside can watch an orchard of flycatchers, right? That means they have to import that data. Well, an importer needs to be able to watch end feeds, so it needs to be able to watch all the feeds from all the flycatchers. And it needs to be able to see or react to tags specifically for it. So we were talking about robots or different scenarios. I want to be able to send a tag to a specific Blogjet and have it be able to do something with that information. And it should learn from feedback. So if if a device is just kicking off a lot of data that isn't useful to any other device, the other devices can say, hey, can you just give me this kind of data? And we were talking about, at CMU last week, I saw a soccer playing robot that they designed. And the way it plays soccer is looks for orange. Right? So the soccer ball's orange. And the camera can sense anything that's orange in the room. And so it'll just sort of report, hey, I saw orange, and go after the orange. And if a new model came along that could sense red, green, blue, and orange, the other robots in the world that were just orange sensing couldn't deal with red, green, and blue information, so they should be able to tell that robot, hey, shut up, just give me the orange stuff, and forget about the red, green, and blue.
That's actually very similar to the camera thing, that in order to be a blockchain, it must be social, in a way. It must to be able to communicate relevant data about the relevant situation to the relevant things. Or at least, things must be able to tell, I want to listen to this. So collective intelligence, we talked a lot about football and bloodstream robots and stuff. And another thing is also a blog should tell something about somebody. In a way, that was not, that we should, you had the point, history. If it's behind the wall, we should be able to learn about it. Look at its history and find out, not just have the data, but understand what it is as an object. And then we sort of started discussing a scenario. It was almost a break. I don't know if you want to say something.
Well, we have a concierge Blogjects 2000 and also a fire scenario with multiple swarms of rescue bots. I don't know what to say, but we sort of for the concierge object robots Blogjects, I guess it was important for it to sort of have a kind of personal relationship with people and kind of recognize people and sort of kind of create be a mediator, facilitator for kind of workplace conversation and kind of know stuff about you or kind of present you with stuff that would just sort of like in a way that would be not so just like informational or mechanical, but sort of like your friendly uncle who tells you dirty jokes. I don't know. And then so that's some very 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 amorphous, undefined. I'm not sure where we're going with that. And there's also the robots sort of in another scenario, a more kind of life and death scenario where you have a bunch of autonomous Blogjects.
So you have a burning building and
right.
you have 50 robots that can go into a building and work together to search room by room for humans or for source of the fire or whatever. And what would they need to kick out as they searched room by room? Well, you need to know where they are and where they have been. So you need, again, that historical. I think that's a theme between all three groups I've heard so far is historical data. You need to be able to see that, maybe not as a human being, but in a system you need to know historical data so you can track where each robot's been, what room's been searched, what have they seen, what are the patterns. You're trying to look for patterns because that's what's important. And I don't know.
So one more thing I wanted to point out. This here, right, just amorphous blob, I think I think there's the input, and then there's like this gray layer of its filter, and then there's an output, and so there's like it's not a direct reporting of facts perhaps, and there's also this a lot of everything coming in and everything coming out, so it's a porous it's like frog skin where it lets things in and puts things out and reacts to stuff. And there's also this sort of this wall filter where you can sort of look into it and you're sort of only seeing a piece of it. And then whether earlier what he mentioned was whether it's a agent for itself, for the group, or for the individual, I guess. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think one conclusion, if I may add, is that we sort of found out that for most Blogjects actually, okay, either it's a very simple thing, as somebody mentioned, or it is something that is not just a Blogject. You can describe parts of its functionality in terms of Blogject, but a concierge you cannot describe a concierge as a Blogject. It's part of it is Blogject, right? When you go to your office, you can then have a look at it, at what happened during the day. It can also read RSS feeds and tell you, okay, when you enter the building, look, there is some hot news or whatever, but it does a lot of other things. And this cannot be conceptualized in terms of blogs. Like the web is not a blog, I'd like to insist on that.